First contact gone wrong. High Admiral Zextal stood at the helm of the Krivax Empire's flagship, the Eternal Dominion, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the soft blue glow of the ship's quantum displays. The warning beacon pulsed before him, its ancient message repeating in a language so old it had taken their most advanced systems 3 cycles to decode. Let those who value their existence avoid the realm of humans. They are not like us. They do not think like us. They do not fight like us. To understand them is to know fear. The message had been left by the precursors, a civilization so advanced they had ascended beyond physical form eons ago. Any warning from them deserved careful consideration. Yet, Zextal felt only excitement coursing through his neural pathways. High Admiral, his second-in-command, Valeros, approached with characteristic caution. The Council's final transmission requests confirmation of our retreat order. Zextal's primary eyes fixed on the vast expanse of space before them, while his secondary set monitored the ship's tactical displays. Send them my regards, Valeros, but inform them that the signal we detected from the human sphere is too significant to ignore. The energy signature suggests technology far beyond our understanding. But, sir, the warnings were left by cowards who feared what they didn't understand, Zextal interrupted. The Krivax Empire didn't become the dominant force in 3 galactic arms by heeding every cautionary tale we encountered. The bridge crew worked in silence, their appendages moving with practiced precision across their control surfaces. The Eternal Dominion led a fleet of 50 warships, each capable of reducing a small moon to atoms. Surely, Zextal thought, this would be enough to handle whatever primitive species had managed to carve out a corner of the galaxy. The signal that had drawn their attention pulsed again, stronger this time. It emanated from a system just beyond the boundary markers that designated human space. The energy pattern was unlike anything in their vast databases, suggesting either an incredible power source or a weapon of unimaginable potential. Begin the approach sequence, Zextal commanded. Full stealth protocols. I want every sensor active but emissions at absolute minimum. The fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their advanced cloaking systems bending light and energy around their massive hulls. As they crossed the boundary into human space, Zextal felt his dermal layers tingle with anticipation. The source of the signal grew closer. Initial scans revealed a structure, artificial, massive, and apparently dormant. It hung in space like an abandoned temple, its architecture both beautiful and terrifying in its complexity. Life signs? Zextal inquired. None detected, High Admiral, Valeros reported. But our scans are having difficulty penetrating certain sections of the structure. The material composition is unusual. Zextal's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Prepare a boarding party. I will lead it myself. Sir, Valeros's exoskeleton flushed with alarm pheromones. Protocol explicitly forbids. Protocol exists to guide the mediocre, Valeros. I didn't reach this position by following paths others had worn smooth. The boarding party assembled in the launch bay, 20 of the Empire's finest warriors equipped with the most advanced combat suits ever created. Zextal stood before them, his own battle armor gleaming under the bay lights. As they approached the structure in their boarding craft, its true scale became apparent. It dwarfed their largest ships, its surface marked with symbols and patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. They found an entry point, an airlock that cycled open at their approach with suspicious ease. The interior was dark, but not dead. Subtle vibrations ran through the deck plates beneath their feet, and the air held traces of elements their sensors couldn't identify. Spread out, but maintain contact, Zextal ordered. Any sign of active technology is to be reported immediately. They moved deeper into the structure, their weapons ready. The corridors seemed to wend in impossible ways, defying the external geometry they had observed. And then they found it, the source of the signal. A simple pedestal stood in a vast chamber, supporting what appeared to be a small crystalline cube that pulsed with inner light. Zextal approached it, his sensors trying to analyze its composition. "Beautiful, isn't it?" A voice spoke from everywhere and nowhere, using perfect Kryvax language. "We thought it might catch your attention." The cube's pulsing increased, and Zextal realized too late that they had walked into a trap. Not just any trap, one specifically designed for a species that prided itself on its technological superiority and couldn't resist a mystery. The last thing Zextal saw before the energy wave hit was a message scrolling across his helmet display. "Welcome to human space. You should have heeded the warning." The price of curiosity. Valrose watched in horror as the energy wave rippled through the structure, engulfing the boarding party's signals one by one. The High Admiral's life signs flatlined last, a final insult to the Kryvax chain of command. As acting commander, Valrose had mere moments to decide the fate of the fleet. All ships, emergency withdrawal. Maximum thrust. The order left his neural transmitter before conscious thought could intervene. The fleet's engines flared to life, but the structure had other plans. Streams of light erupted from previously invisible ports, forming a web of energy that trapped the Kryvax vessels like insects in amber. The Eternal Dominion's quantum drives screamed in protest as they tried to break free, but the energy field held firm. "Weapons free. Target the structure's primary mass," Valrose commanded. 50 ships unleashed their full arsenal, enough firepower to shatter a small planet. The energy beams and plasma torpedoes approached their target and vanished, absorbed without effect. A new voice filled their communications channels, speaking in flawless Kryvax. "Your weapons are impressive. Primitive, but impressive. Unfortunately, you're currently inside a temporal containment field. From your perspective, those shots won't actually hit their target for several hundred years." Valrose's exoskeleton paled. "Identify yourself." "Commander Sarah Chen, Human Defense Force. You're currently experiencing what we call a teachable moment. Your fleet has violated human space despite clear warnings, and now we need to have a discussion about consequences." The bridge crew exchanged alarmed glances. The humans weren't supposed to be this advanced. All intelligence suggested they were barely capable of interstellar travel, let alone temporal manipulation. "We detected an energy signature," Valrose began. "Yes, the lure," Commander Chen interrupted. "We found it's the most efficient way to identify potentially hostile species. Those who respect boundaries ignore it. Those who don't, well, here you are." A holographic image materialized on the bridge. A human female, wearing what appeared to be a simple uniform. Valrose noted with dismay that she showed no signs of fear or uncertainty. "Your High Admiral and boarding party are alive, by the way," Chen continued. "They're just experiencing time at a somewhat different rate while we process them. Now, we have two options here. 1. We can treat this as a legitimate first contact situation, albeit a rather poorly initiated one on your part. 2. We can demonstrate why every spacefaring race in this sector gives Earth a wide berth." Valrose's tactical training screamed that this had to be a bluff. No species could be this casual about holding 50 capital ships in stasis. "You expect me to believe that humans, who haven't even colonized their entire solar system, possess this level of technology?" Chen smiled, and Valrose felt his secondary heart skip a beat. "Who told you we haven't colonized our system?" "The same sources that said we were primitive." "Commander, has it occurred to you that everything you know about humans might be exactly what we wanted you to know?" The hologram expanded, showing the space around the fleet. What had appeared to be empty void was suddenly filled with structures and ships that seemed to fade into existence, like ghosts becoming solid. "We call it quantum camouflage," Chen explained. "Most species look for energy signatures, gravity distortions, or light displacement. We simply moved our technology into quantum states that your sensors interpret as empty space. Right now, you're surrounded by the 7th Fleet of the Human Defense Force. They've been here the entire time." Valrose watched as hundreds of human vessels shimmered into view, their designs unlike anything in Krivak's records. They weren't the sleek, efficient shapes favored by most spacefaring races. These ships looked like they had been designed by someone who had fever dreams about abstract geometry and then made them real. Your High Admiral will be returned to you shortly, along with the boarding party, Chen continued. They've had an interesting few subjective days learning about human history and why we value our privacy. I suggest you listen carefully to what they have to say. The energy web surrounding the fleet began to dissolve, but Valeros noticed that the human ships maintained their position, weapons ports clearly visible. One last thing, Chen added, her expression growing serious. The warning beacon you ignored. We didn't put it there. The precursors did, after they encountered us and realized what we were capable of. They didn't ascend, Commander. They ran. The hologram vanished, leaving Valeros and his crew to contemplate the implications of that statement. Moments later, the boarding party's life signs reappeared on their sensors. The High Admiral's neural transmitter activated immediately. Get us out of here. Valeros. Zextal's voice was barely a whisper. Get us out of here now. As the fleet retreated at maximum speed, Valeros couldn't help but notice that the human ships made no attempt to follow. They didn't need to. The message had been delivered. Human space was not a prize to be claimed or a territory to be invaded. It was a predator's lair, and they had just been allowed to leave it with their lives. Turning point. The Grand Council chamber of the Krivak's Empire had never been so silent. High Admiral Zextal stood before the assembled leaders, his once pristine crystalline exoskeleton now marked with strange, iridescent patterns, permanent reminders of his time in human custody. The security footage from the Eternal Dominion played behind him, showing their humiliating encounter in excruciating detail. 3 subjective months. Zextal's voice resonated through the chamber. I experienced 3 months while my fleet experienced mere minutes. The humans wanted to educate me, to ensure I understood not just their capability, but their philosophy. Supreme Counselor, Mexar's feeding tendrils twisted in agitation. And what did you learn, High Admiral, during your extended stay? That everything we believed about technological advancement was wrong. Zextal activated a holographic display, showing designs unlike anything the Council had seen before. The humans don't think like us. They don't progress like us. While we perfect and refine, they imagine. The images shifted, showing human history. Not the sanitized intelligence reports they'd received, but the true history the humans had shared with their captive audience. It was chaos. Beautiful, terrifying chaos. They developed thousands of different technologies simultaneously, Zextal continued. Not in an ordered logical progression like our society, but in random, seemingly illogical bursts. They pursued dead ends, impossible dreams, and absurd theories, and sometimes those led to their greatest breakthroughs. Are you suggesting we should abandon our methodical approach to advancement? Another counselor interrupted, alarmed. I'm suggesting that our methodical approach is precisely why they're so far ahead of us. We see a wall. We stop. They see a wall. They try to go through it, around it, under it, or they simply pretend it isn't there and somehow succeed anyway. The chamber erupted in agitated clicks and whistles as the council members processed this heretical concept. Zextal waited for the noise to subside before delivering his most devastating revelation. The structure we encountered, it wasn't a trap. It was a test. One of thousands they've scattered throughout this sector of space. Each one is different, designed to reveal the nature of any species that investigates it. Ours showed them that we're aggressive, hierarchical, and overconfident. Supreme Counselor, Mexar's primary eyes narrowed. And what would have happened if we passed their test? Then we would have met them as equals. The humans maintain diplomatic relations with 17 species we've never encountered. Civilizations that chose to communicate rather than conquer. They showed me recordings of their diplomatic station. It's extraordinary. The chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. The Krivak's Empire, which had expanded relentlessly for millennia, had finally found not just a superior force, but one that operated on fundamentally different principles. "There's more," Zextal added, his tone growing even more serious. "The humans knew about us long before we detected them. They've been watching, evaluating. That signal we detected, they let us find it because they decided it was time for us to learn our place in the galaxy." He gestured, and new images appeared. Vast structures hidden in quantum states, fleets that could rewrite the laws of physics, and weapons that treated time itself as a tactical resource. "But here's what truly terrifies me," Zextal continued. "All of this technology, all of this power, it's not their primary focus. They spend more resources on art, music, and what they call pure research than they do on their military. They're not warriors who learn to use advanced technology. They're dreamers who learn to defend their right to dream." The council chamber remained silent as Zextal's words hung in the air. Finally, Supreme Counselor Mexar spoke. "Your recommendation, High Admiral, we change, completely, immediately." The humans gave me access to their historical records as a warning and an invitation. They showed me how many civilizations faced this moment. This realization that they weren't the apex of evolution. Some adapted, some didn't. The ones that didn't, they're now footnotes in human archaeological studies. The patterns on Zextal's exoskeleton shifted, forming complex geometries that seemed to move of their own accord. The humans altered me at a quantum level. They said it was a gift, the ability to perceive reality as they do. I see things now that I never could before. Possibilities. Connections. They said when we're ready to talk instead of conquer, I'll know how to contact them. He faced the council, all four eyes glowing with an inner light that hadn't been there before. "We stand at a turning point. We can remain what we are and eventually fade into irrelevance, or we can learn from this encounter and become something new. The humans are watching, waiting to see which path we choose." The council chambers erupted in debate, but Zextal knew the decision had already been made. The Kryvax Empire would adapt or it would die. The humans had ensured there was no middle ground. The human response. Commander Sarah Chen stood before the United Earth Defense Council, her holographic form projected into the vast circular chamber carved into the heart of Europa. The ice moon's subsurface ocean thundered miles below, its rhythmic movements powering the quantum computers that helped coordinate humanity's defense network. "The Kryvax Empire is experiencing unprecedented upheaval," she reported, gesturing to bring up a dynamic model of their territory. High Admiral Zextal's revelations have triggered what they're calling the Great Transformation. However, not everyone is embracing change. The model highlighted several systems in red, indicating regions where traditionalist factions had taken control of military assets. Other areas glowed green, showing where reformists had begun implementing radical changes to Kryvax society. Admiral Rodriguez, his dark eyes reflecting the holographic display, leaned forward. "Your assessment of their chances, Commander?" 50-50, Chen replied. "The quantum markers we implanted in Zextal are functioning as intended. He's becoming a catalyst for change, though he doesn't fully understand how. Every time he shares his new perspective, the quantum resonance spreads, making it easier for others to grasp concepts that were previously alien to their way of thinking. And if the traditionalists win?" Counselor Zhang's question hung in the air. Chen's expression hardened. "Then the Kryvax Empire collapses into civil war, and we proceed with Contingency Plan Delta. But I don't think that will be necessary. The seeds we planted are growing faster than expected." The holographic display shifted, showing footage from various Kryvax worlds. Young members of their species were organizing what they called imagination circles, attempting to break free from their rigid, hierarchical thought patterns. Some had even begun creating art, a concept that had been virtually non-existent in their culture before. "What fascinates me," Chen continued, "is how they're adapting our methods to their own biology. Watch this." The display focused on a group of Kryvax youth, their crystalline exoskeletons refracting light in complex patterns. They had discovered that by manipulating their natural bioluminescence in certain sequences, they could induce altered states of consciousness that allowed for more creative thinking. They're literally rewriting their own neural patterns, Chen explained. Evolution in real time, driven by choice rather than circumstance. The conservatives see it as a corruption of their species. The progressives see it as transcendence. Admiral Rodriguez nodded slowly. And Zextal. He's become something of a religious figure, though he's fighting against that interpretation. The quantum modifications we made to his exoskeleton continue to evolve, creating patterns that shouldn't be possible according to Krivak's biology. He's living proof that their understanding of reality was incomplete. The council chamber fell silent as images of Zextal appeared, his crystalline form now a symphony of impossible colors and patterns. The modifications had spread beyond his exoskeleton, reaching into the quantum structure of his consciousness. There's something else, Chen added, her tone growing more serious. They've begun experimenting with technology in ways we didn't anticipate. They're not just copying our methods, they're finding their own path to quantum engineering. Look at this. The display showed a Krivak's research facility, where scientists had discovered that their crystalline biology could be used as a basis for quantum computing. They were literally turning their own bodies into technological interfaces, bridging the gap between organic and artificial in ways that even humans hadn't explored. Should we be concerned? Counselor Zhang asked. Chen shook her head. On the contrary, this is exactly what we hoped for. They're not becoming us. They're becoming a better version of themselves. The quantum markers we planted aren't controlling them. They're just opening their minds to new possibilities. What they do with those possibilities is up to them. And the traditionalists, Rodriguez pressed, are becoming increasingly isolated. Every time they try to suppress the changes, they only succeed in making them more attractive to the younger generations. We've seen this pattern before in human history. The harder you try to contain cultural evolution, the more explosive its eventual expression becomes. The council members exchanged glances. They had guided other species through similar transformations before, but never one as powerful or as set in their ways as the Krivaks. Your recommendation? Rodriguez asked. We proceed as planned. Continue monitoring, but maintain our distance. The quantum network we established through Zextal is self-sustaining now. The Krivaks will either emerge from this as a species ready to join the galactic community, or they'll tear themselves apart trying to prevent the inevitable. Either way, humanity's interests are protected. Chen's hologram gestured one final time, showing the spread of quantum resonance patterns across Krivak space. Like a neural network coming alive, new connections formed and strengthened with each passing moment. They named their first artistic movement Breaking Crystal, she said, allowing herself a small smile. I think that says everything about where they're headed. The question isn't whether they'll change, it's whether they can change fast enough to survive what they're becoming. A lesson in humility. One standard year after their fateful encounter with humanity, the Krivak's empire ceased to exist. Not with the bang of war or conquest, but with the whisper of transformation. In its place arose something new. The Krivak's Collective, a civilization reborn through the fusion of their ancient strength and newly awakened creativity. High Admiral Zextal, now bearing the title of First Speaker, stood in the newly constructed Chamber of Possibilities. His crystalline form had evolved far beyond standard Krivak's biology, each facet of his exoskeleton a window into quantum states that most of his species were only beginning to perceive. They're here, Valrose announced, his own form showing the early signs of quantum evolution. The patterns across his exoskeleton shifted in complex harmonies, a visible sign of the changes spreading through their society. The human delegation materialized in the center of the chamber. No ships, no dramatic entrance, simply a transition from not being to being that still caused many Krivak's observers to emit clicks of astonishment. Commander Chen led the group, her expression neutral but her eyes bright with interest. First Speaker, she greeted Zextal. Your invitation was intriguing. Zextal's primary eyes focused on Chen while his secondary set tracked the quantum states swirling around the human delegation. We have something to show you, something we think will surprise even humanity. He gestured, and the chamber's walls became transparent, revealing the space beyond. The humans' expressions remained carefully controlled, but Zextal detected the spike in their quantum signatures that indicated genuine amazement. The Kryvax homeworld had been transformed. The rigid crystalline architecture that had defined their civilization for millennia now flowed like frozen music. Buildings shifted and changed in response to the needs and emotions of their inhabitants. The entire planet pulsed with patterns of light that corresponded to the collective consciousness of its population. We call it the living city, Zextal explained. We discovered that our crystalline biology, when properly attuned, can form quantum entanglements on a planetary scale. The entire world has become a single conscious entity, with us as both its components and its shepherds. Chen stepped forward, her hand passing through a stream of quantum data that flowed through the air. This isn't anything like our technology, she said softly. No, Zextal agreed. You showed us that we needed to change, but you also showed us that we needed to change in our own way. We're not becoming human. We're becoming what the Kryvax always had the potential to be. A lesson in humility. One standard year after their fateful encounter with humanity, the Kryvax Empire ceased to exist, not with the bang of war or conquest, but with the whisper of transformation. In its place arose something new. The Kryvax Collective, a civilization reborn through the fusion of their ancient strength and newly awakened creativity. High Admiral Zextal, now bearing the title of First Speaker, stood in the newly constructed Chamber of Possibilities. His crystalline form had evolved far beyond standard Kryvax biology, each facet of his exoskeleton a window into quantum states that most of his species were only beginning to perceive. "They're here," Valrose announced, his own form showing the early signs of quantum evolution. The patterns across his exoskeleton shifted in complex harmonies, a visible sign of the changes spreading through their society. The human delegation materialized in the center of the chamber. No ships, no dramatic entrance, simply a transition from not being to being that still caused many Kryvax observers to emit clicks of astonishment. Commander Chen led the group, her expression neutral but her eyes bright with interest. "First Speaker," she greeted Zextal. "Your invitation was intriguing." Zextal's primary eyes focused on Chen while his secondary set tracked the quantum states swirling around the human delegation. "We have something to show you, something we think will surprise even humanity." He gestured, and the chamber's walls became transparent, revealing the space beyond. The humans' expressions remained carefully controlled, but Zextal detected the spike in their quantum signatures that indicated genuine amazement. The Kryvax homeworld had been transformed. The rigid crystalline architecture that had defined their civilization for millennia now flowed like frozen music. Buildings shifted and changed in response to the needs and emotions of their inhabitants. The entire planet pulsed with patterns of light that corresponded to the collective consciousness of its population. "We call it the living city," Zextal explained. "We discovered that our crystalline biology, when properly attuned, can form quantum entanglements on a planetary scale. The entire world has become a single conscious entity, with us as both its components and its shepherds." Chen stepped forward, her hand passing through a stream of quantum data that flowed through the air. "This isn't anything like our technology," she said softly. "No," Zextal agreed. "You showed us that we needed to change, but you also showed us that we needed to change in our own way. We're not becoming human. We're becoming what the Kryvax always had the potential to be." The chamber filled with shifting patterns of light as more Kryvax arrived, their forms ranging from traditionally crystalline to wildly evolved variants that barely resembled their original species. Each one contributed to the quantum symphony that now defined their civilization. "The conservatives who oppose change," Chen began, "have largely joined us," Valrose interrupted. It's difficult to argue against progress when you can literally see new possibilities written in the quantum structure of reality. Those who couldn't adapt have self-segregated to colony worlds where they can maintain their traditional way of life. And you're allowing that? Another human delegate asked. Zextal's form sparkled with what the humans had learned to recognize as amusement. Of course, you taught us that strength lies in diversity, not uniformity. They are our connection to what we were, while we explore what we might become. The question, Chen said, is what you want from humanity now. Want? Zextal's patterns shifted to express a complex emotion that had no name in human languages. We want to show you what we've created, to prove that your faith in our potential wasn't misplaced. And perhaps, his form rippled with new patterns, to suggest that humanity might learn something from us in return. The human delegation exchanged glances. This was unprecedented. In all their encounters with other species, humanity had always been the teacher, the guide, the advanced civilization showing others the way forward. But the Kryvax had taken their lessons and created something entirely new. You've surprised us, Chen admitted finally. That doesn't happen often. Good, Zextal's form pulsed with satisfaction, because we have a proposal. You showed us how to break free from our rigid patterns of thought. Now we'd like to show you how to weave consciousness into the fabric of reality itself, not through technology, but through the fundamental nature of your being. He gestured, and the quantum patterns around them coalesced into a visual representation of his proposal, a fusion of human innovation and Kryvax quantum biology that could revolutionize both civilizations. You engineered our first contact to teach us humility, Zextal said. Now we offer you this same gift. There are still things in this universe that even humanity hasn't dreamed of. Shall we explore them together? Commander Chen looked at the swirling quantum patterns, then at the transformed Kryvax civilization around them. After a moment, she smiled, a genuine expression that contained both humility and joy. First speaker, she said, I believe this is the beginning of a fascinating partnership. Above them, the living city sang with possibilities, its crystalline spires reaching toward stars that suddenly seemed less distant, less cold, and full of new potential. The Kryvax had learned their lesson in humility, and in doing so, had earned the right to teach one of their own. In the quantum patterns that filled the chamber, human and Kryvax consciousness began to harmonize, creating something that neither species had imagined possible before this moment. The future, like the transformed city around them, was no longer a fixed destination, but a symphony of endless possibility.